Alright, so if you guys have not paid attention to the latest episode of YouTube, Sony has released a brand new camera that's way more affordable, especially for you guys that want to get into the cinema line of things, and that is the Sony FX30. So I actually woke up reasonably not that early to actually watch the announcement for it, and basically what I gathered from this announcement was that the Sony FX30 is essentially the Sony FX3 with a crop sensor. You're still going to get the same shooting modes between 4K 24p right up to 120 frames a second, so you are going to have an APS-C cropped in sensor. However, it actually is a 6K sample down to 4K, so it actually might be a little bit sharper than you would find on a 4K cropped image on something like the Sony FX3. You're still getting that 10-bit color space. You're going to be able to shoot in S-Log3 and S-Cinetone, which most of the Sony cameras nowadays actually have. You're also going to get a 26.1 sensor, so if you do want to take photos like thumbnails or something small for social media, you still have the ability to do so on this camera, just like you would on the Sony FX3. Now, what's cool about this is that you're also going to get things like the new menu that came in the firmware update for the Sony FX3, which allows you to use flexible ISO, Cine EI Quick, and Cine EI in general, which means that you're going to be able to use the base ISO that's in previous cameras the same way you would on the Sony FX30. Now, the difference is that the dual base ISO is actually going to be 800 and 2500 instead of 12,800 on the Sony FX30, which in theory means that it might not be as good in low light, but that's something you would expect out of something like a crop sensor camera versus something that's full frame. On top of that, you're also going to get the ability to load in LUTs just like you would on the other cinema cameras, and you also get time code, which means that you're going to be able to use this in professional applications, especially when you're working with other cameras like an FX9 or a Venice or an FX6 or even another FX3 in terms of being able to match your audio via time code. Like its older sibling, the FX3, you're going to get the XLR top handle as well. Now, they haven't made any improvements or changes to this top handle. It's essentially the same thing, so you will need these rubber spacers. Just one second. You will need like these little guys in order to get your microphone on if you're not using the Sony microphones, but you still have the option to get professional audio out of something like a crop sensor camera. Now, here's one thing that's going to piss off a lot of you guys if you have the FX3 or the A7S III or even the Sony A1. They put focus breathing compensation in the Sony FX30, which might actually annoy a lot of you, and we're sorry, I don't really know. I don't know if it's a firmware thing or if it's a hardware thing, but I have the Sony FX6 and A7 IV, and they both have focus breathing compensation. So all of my Sony G and G Master lenses, I don't have to worry about the focus breathing, but they just don't have that update for other cameras previous, but they did put it in the new one. Essentially, this entire setup is a mini Sony FX3, which is a camera that a lot of people have even left the Sony A7S III for its video-centric features. And you get all of these things for $1,800 US, which is less than half of what the Sony FX3 cost. Now, to be fair, you're not gonna get the audio top handle in the $1,800 option, but at this point, I don't know what people are complaining about. Now, I was reading the chat in the announcement and people were complaining about not having built-in ND filters, or the fact that it's not gonna do 12-bit RAW, or any of these things that you expect from a camera that's 10 times this cost. This camera is made for people that are just starting off into the cinema line of cameras. Just a couple of years ago, when I picked up the Blackmagic 4K as a camera that I was going to end up using, it didn't have nearly half of these features and it cost $600 less, but by the time I had to rig it up with different audio and different ways to store things and having a cage for it, and a lot of the things that the Sony FX30 comes to, the price points became really close together to each other. Basically what Sony's trying to say is, we don't care who you are. We are inviting you into our system because at every price point, there's a different camera for you. Right down into getting something that's sub $2,000, you can get a cinema camera that's gonna give you high quality 4K, the ability to shoot in RAW, and you're also gonna be able to use all the video-centric features that you find even on the cinema line of things, something that not even Canon has even ventured into doing because they like keeping things close to the vest and not sharing anything, like an only child. Basically what I'm trying to say is that there isn't any more excuses nowadays. If you are looking for a camera at almost any budget range, you can find one. And the Sony FX30 is another way to add an affordable option for filmmakers that want to get more into video, but they don't want to spend gigantic price tags in terms of getting the equipment to make high quality images. Now, all the embargo videos have already come out, so you can actually see people using this in the field, and I'm just about to set up my playlist to go and watch all of them, but to be honest, I'm putting in my pre-order. Now, to be completely truthful, I actually ended up selling my FX3 a couple of months ago. The amount of money that it was to rig out and the cost for it didn't match up to the actual uses that I used it for. A lot of times it was just a B camera for 2-camera angle interviews or a top-down angle for YouTube videos, and it just didn't make any sense. What I really wanted is a camera that would match up really well with the Sony FX6 in terms of the video-centric features, but also didn't have to sacrifice on a lot of the quality. So where the Sony FX30 is going to fit into my workflow, and it might for you if you're somebody that has the FX9 or FX6 or other cameras, is that B or C camera. If you need something for just supplementary angles, maybe a little bit of B-roll, or maybe just a top-down angle, if you're somebody that's in the realm of buying more expensive camera gear, this is pretty much the price of a lens that you would pick up for your cinema camera, which means that you're going to get another angle for not that much more money than you would have expected versus buying some other cameras that are on the market. That being said, these are my thoughts about the Sony FX30. I'm actually gonna go put in a pre-order to go and pick up this camera, test it out, and actually start to use it for a lot more things on YouTube, especially when I need that second or that third camera angle. That being said, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.